In 4 years of fighting across the Pacific, Japanese codebreakers cracked nearly every American cipher they intercepted. But they never cracked this one. Not once. And the men who built it weren't cryptographers. Most of them had never used a telephone before they enlisted. By 1942, the U.S. Marine Corps had a problem. Every code they used in the Pacific was getting broken, sometimes within hours. Japan had spent years studying American communications and had genuinely brilliant codebreakers working the problem full-time. Philip Johnson had an idea. He'd grown up on a Navajo reservation as the son of missionaries, one of the few non-Navajo people who spoke the language fluently. He pitched the Marines on something simple: use Navajo as the basis for a code. The language was almost entirely unwritten. There was no dictionary, no grammar textbook sitting in a Tokyo library. Fewer than 30 non-Navajo people in the world could speak it, and none of them were Japanese. The Marines were skeptical, then tested it. 4 Navajo men translated and transmitted 3 lines of English text in 20 seconds. A machine cipher took 30 minutes to do the same job. 29 Navajo men were recruited for the first class in May 1942. Here's where the secret code part actually gets interesting, because it wasn't just spoken Navajo. Navajo alone wouldn't have worked for long. Japan had Navajo speakers among the small number of Americans who'd studied the language academically, so a fluent Japanese Navajo speaker could theoretically follow along. So the original 29 built a second layer on top of the language itself. Military terms didn't exist in Navajo, so they invented them. A fighter plane became Dehi Tai Hai, hummingbird. A submarine became Beshlo, ironfish. A battleship was Lotso, whale. Tanks were Chadia Gahi, turtle. Officers were ranked by bird names. Colonel was Atsabeshlagai, silver eagle. Then they added a substitution alphabet for spelling out names and places letter by letter, using Navajo words for English letters. A meant Wulachi, ant. B meant shush, bear. To make the code harder to crack through letter frequency analysis, they built in multiple Navajo words for the most common English letters, so E could be Dze, Ana, or Ajar depending on which the coder chose in the moment. None of this was written down in the field. It had to be memorized completely. A code talker had to hold roughly 400 terms in his head and translate under fire, fast enough to matter and accurately enough that a wrong word didn't get someone killed. The code went into combat at Guadalcanal in 1942 and stayed in service through every major Pacific campaign after. Iwo Jima is the one most people know. Major Howard Connor, the signal officer for the 5th Marine Division, had 6 Navajo code talkers working continuously through the first 2 days of the battle. He later said that without them, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima. Those 6 men sent and received over 800 messages in that stretch. No errors. Japanese intelligence recorded the sound of the transmissions. Officers described it as unlike any human language they'd ever encountered, closer to birdsong or, at one point in a captured document, someone guessed it might be a form of Chinese. They never got closer than a guess. There's a strange detail buried in one veteran's account. During a lull at Iwo Jima, a code talker's radio partner asked him to say something ordinary in Navajo, just to hear what it sounded like without the code attached. He said he couldn't remember how. He'd been speaking in code so long he had to think for a second to find a plain sentence. The program stayed classified after the war ended. Not the existence of Navajo servicemen, that was public. The code itself stayed secret, because the Pentagon considered it a reusable asset for future conflicts, and it was in fact used again in Korea and into the early Vietnam War. That meant the code talkers went home and couldn't tell anyone what they'd actually done. Not their families, not the other veterans in town. Some were asked directly by military intelligence to sign statements agreeing never to discuss it. A number of them worked without full recognition for decades. The code wasn't declassified until 1968. Public credit, including a Congressional Gold Medal for the original 29, didn't arrive until 2001, by which point most of them had died without ever hearing an official thank you. The code was never broken by cryptanalysis. It was declassified by decision, not by defeat. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for more signal history.